Hi, and welcome to Passion for Testing. Today's meetup will be about code or no code in test automation. But first, a little bit about Passion for Testing. We are a no-profit community. We are located in Gothenburg. We are also partnered with Ministry of Testing, and everyone that comes here has a passion for testing and a will to learn and want to try new test techniques and methods in order to develop your personal skills within software testing. And today we will have a meetup about code or no code in test automation. And a little background to this is that in recent years, test automation has been on everyone's lips, and you should do more of that. And everywhere testers should learn to automate is the common saying. And there are many that have a hard time learning how to code and using the tools that are out there. So could one solution to the problem then be using codeless automation, or is that an insecure path to take? In this meetup we will have two perspectives on this. It will be a discussion about the topic and what are the benefits and what are the risks. Could this be something to consider in your future testing career, or is it too uncertain and let's wait until it's proven to work instead? And the speakers here will be Sune Engsig, Chief Evangelist at Leapwork. And Sune has more than 20 years of experience working with business and process development, as well as IT architecture for enterprises. In addition, he has extensive project management experience from both government and the telecom industry. He is driven by a mission to find ways for business to extend their capabilities with help of technology. And then it will be me, Jonas Breisel. I'm CEO at Explora for Test, and I have more than 10 years of experience, and I'm higher part of this time in leading roles such as test coach, test lead, or test architect. And still during the whole time I have been testing and involved in test activities. And I have also a great experience in test automation, exploratory testing, test strategies, and teaching others in testing lately. So now we will jump right back into the meetup, where I just have asked Sune the question about what he thinks is the challenges with test automations today.
And in the reality in many of these organizations, it's not either or. It's just a case of saying, well, I have so and so many skilled people working capable of doing automation. It's hard for me to get any more because, you guys are a scarce resource with the skill sets and competencies that you bring to the table. So how can I unlock the ability to do further automation? I think that has to be a part of the conversation as well, not just looking at it from a utilitarian perspective. Can I do as much in the no-code tool? Obviously, we like to say that we can, but that's really not the point. The point is to say, from an organization's perspective, there's a problem. And the problem is that there's more work than I can cope with. And how can we then make that more accessible for the organizations, for the owners of the businesses, to solve that particular problem? And I think that needs to be a part of the conversation as well. Hope it makes sense.
Yeah, anything you said makes sense. But so which type of test automation that are done with code today are you think that you could replace with Leapwork instead? Since you have, for example, if we start with, you have the different layers like unit testing or integration or system, but then you have a lot of different type of systems and so on as well.
Yeah. So we like to say when we're hardest at work doing demos, we like to say that we can automate anything with a GUI, basically. So anything with a user interface, we can automate them, and we can automate them individually, and we can automate them in an orchestrated context. And as you all know, automating stuff with a GUI is only a piece of the the full puzzle. So answering the question in another way, then what types of automation are we less equipped for doing? That could be use cases such as API and unit testing. That could be ultimately anything without a GUI in it, and if you need to do verification on a parsing level and stuff like that, then we're not the obvious tool for that job. And I think and I don't know, and it could be interesting, I don't know if you can do a poll in here, but an interesting question could be how many of you guys are in an organization where the expectation sort of is to be able to do this using one tool only, right? To cover all aspects of testing with only one tool. I don't know what you think, Jonas, if that's a thing when in the spots that you are navigating.
Yeah, I've seen that quite many times, and it's the most funny scenario I think is that they have chosen a tool because that's their favorite tool, and then they're going to use that one without even have been deciding what they're going to test or what information they want to get. So
exactly,
they have decided a tool because every tool helps you to find different types of information. So
exactly, and solves different aspects of the problem, right?
Yeah. But you said you test your GUI then, so are you doing real GUI testing? Since there are many tools that claim they are doing GUI testing, but they actually aren't, like Selenium. That's more like a functional testing because it's not testing the actual pictures or background colors or things like that on the screen. It's using the DOM model. So.
Yeah, good question. So and as you say, there are when you then open up the box of GUI, there are many different aspects of that. So another one could be accessibility testing. Are we validating that? And we're actually not doing that particularly well. At least not sort of as a, there's not a button in Leapwork that says do accessibility testing. It would be an obvious thing to do, but we haven't gotten around to that. So if you wanted to build a verification of the accessibility features on your website, you'd have to build flows that would uncover these functionalities and check if they're materialized in the right way. They would still not answer, for instance, those code level verifications, those tools that you can get them as plugins for Chrome, right? And validate that stuff is more or less behaving as it should in an accessibility perspective. So very good example. And yes, we are leaning towards the functional verification side of things, but we can do also do verification on a visual side. So for instance, is this the right color? Is this layout presented in roughly the right way? But again, for instance, layout verification is a very good example of how there are dedicated tools even for that. I've seen automation solutions targeted at publishers, maybe not so strangely, right? So publishing content on different platforms and different screens, but validating first and foremost that layout behaves as required. So what we can do, a long time getting to an answer to your question. So what we can help validate is the user experience from a functional perspective. So as a user, are you able to operate the given business application? Are you able to take from a business processing perspective the journey from A to B with the expected result? And are you capable of doing the required actions on the way? So whatever steps that are required as part of a given process, long or short, to validate that it behaves, that you are able to do what you need to do, that the application responds as you expect it to do, from that business processing perspective. In that field, we are very strong.
Okay, yeah. So, but if I remember correctly, it was only available for Windows, your program, or how was it?
Yes. There are some. You have good skills at pointing your thumbs at the touchy points. Yes, that is actually one of our big focus points as of now. So I know when you talk to vendors, right, they always go, "Oh, we have that on the roadmap." But we are currently rebuilding the entire application. That dependency on. So we have two challenges on an architectural level, you could say, and I think be transparent with those to explain why it is actually on our roadmap. Current Windows-based architecture service-based in Windows. So you have Studio, which is the user-facing side where you build your automation flows. It's a Windows application. It's a thin client, which talks then again to a Windows-based service, which is the server. And then we have the agents, which are the ones executing the automation. Now these are deployed either on one machine or on each their separate machine. And in a modern internet native context, this is like so last year, the way that operates. It has some virtues to it. It's a very robust structure, but it's also kind of inflexible, especially in those use cases where you want to deploy, you want to ramp up capacity for whatever reason. You have a big thing coming up, or there's an imminent release which requires you to do extensive testing. And under normal circumstances, you may not need that automation capacity. So having that flexibility, for instance, is typically something that you would associate with those internet native technologies. So that's something that we're trying to respond to, because we are talking to a lot of enterprise grade clients. And of course, and I guess that's also where your question is coming from, Linux is a thing when talking to these organizations. So needless to say, we want our software to be able to run on Linux. We expect it to be ready sometime this time next year, with a fully changed architecture, which will be based on running on Linux, running in containers, and being fully virtualized and all of that, so that you can run it in, you would say, 2021, 22 kind of fashion. So, but it's a good point.
Yeah, because I would say almost everyone are using, as you went into, containers or virtual machines, or at least Jenkins in some way, or some similar tool like Jenkins.
Yes,
and
totally agree. To get that flexibility, to be able to spin up resources and assets from an automation perspective as dynamically and flexible as the nature of testing itself, it only makes sense. But as a company, we're not that old. As I mentioned, we've had the product in the market since 2016, and we were, and we still are in many ways, Windows native. And we also obviously need to be mindful of that, even though that servers are Linux based, workstations typically are not. They're still running Windows to a very large extent, although we also hear, I don't know what you guys feel. Again, that could be another poll, where you see desktop applications moving in the workspace. Obviously, Mac is coming in, I think even more so than just for a couple of years ago.
I've seen many more using Mac today than
and also
before.
Exactly, and it's not just the developers anymore. It's it's also business users doing actual, forgive me, business work as opposed to writing applications, right? So it's certainly a trend. So another thing that is missing in our, you could say, capacity scope is to automate stuff running on OS, on Mac OS, which this new architecture, of course, will also enable us to do. Okay. So it's going to be part of a trajectory over the next 12 to 18, 24 months, where we will gradually, implement all of those features, starting with that microservice and containerized infrastructure, which is the starting point for what we are then going to be doing. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay, but it sounds like your tool is aiming for the GUI testing then.
Yes, we've certainly picked that location, and it's coming from the fact that that part of that dimension of testing, engaging that type of people, that skill set, the ones safeguarding a mix of a user experience and a business continuity angle. Those are the ones that we want to attack and enable, really, for creating automation in that very particular context, which also, of course, means if you look at it from a software deployment and delivery perspective, when to apply Leapwork, when to do it, when to introduce automation. We're constantly pushing that barrier to make it feasible for you to do that, as early as you possibly can, which is typically not what you associate it with when you talk, automation of the GUI, because you kind of want a fairly stable GUI before you throw automation efforts into it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it needs to be flexible. It needs to be easy to maintain. It needs to be easy to update, so that it can sort of be part of that dynamic nature which is testing. And I'm bringing that up due to the difference there is between automation in QA versus RPA. Because what I think is also an interesting topic is that convergence that we're seeing with these different automation tools. Certainly, vendors such as UiPath, who's introduced the testing leg, if you will, of their overall automation capability. But this convergence means that you're just going to see that they're targeting that same user segment, right? They're targeting those business-driven users who are first and foremost focusing on the business process side of things, and the path from A to B.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting because I know about a couple of other tools that are also trying to introduce AI into their to generate test cases for them, so to say.
Yeah.
I know one scientist in software testing that is part of working with one tool, for example. I don't think it's iAutomate or something like that, but it's an interesting thing that all these tools that comes up aim for the GUI testing. That's not about coding. So
No.
I don't know any tool yet that try to replace a lower level than that.
Well, I know a few. I would like to say, though, for this whole topic of AI, and I think if you go to the Leapwork website, you will struggle to find any significant traces of AI. So in this closed room among friends, AI. I mean, I saw this joke once. If it's written in PowerPoint, it's probably AI, and when it's written in Python, it's probably machine learning. And it's this seriously hyped term. I mean, we don't have any AI going anywhere, I would argue, worth mentioning about. Even those testing tools, and maybe those are the ones that you're referring to in a way. Those tools talking about self-healing and AI, this and that, in terms of restructuring and structuring the locators that you require to run. So going back to what I was talking about previously, this very dynamic nature of automation in QA, as opposed to automation in production in RPA, where you're working in a much more stable environment. Sure, that business process that you've built automation for, it might change, and then obviously you need to change and update the flow. But in QA, you're constantly working with stuff that is emerging, that is in transit towards completion. So it's always moving about, and it's always in need of maintenance and in updating, and so the target and the objective of these tools needs to be different, and that's that all of this AI nonsense is driving into that of trying to sort of sell this concept to the customers that you can it's sort of a shoot and forget solution, right? So just build the flow, and the AI will take care of it for eternity, which is I'm not going to be using those kind of words here on this webcast, but it's it's nonsense.
Yeah, I agree that it's not real AI. It is machine learning they are using, and most
on a good day
that claim AI are using machine learning.
On a good day, it's machine learning, and normally it's just statistics and a good old math.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I watched a fun video yesterday that was just about how to play a game. I don't remember the name of it, but it was, as I say, just about learning. So, and the machine learned by punishment. So each time it did something wrong, that alternative was removed, and in that way it became smarter. It didn't do that mistake again.
Exactly, but it's if you strip away the marketing bollocks, right, and look at what it is that you want to achieve, and then be it using statistics or plain old math or whatever it is, I mean, then it makes perfect sense, because if you have a given button that says okay or buy or something, and then someone changes the underlying structure behind that particular button, but it still says buy, then it makes perfect sense to throw a simple logic on top of that and say from a user perspective, this button is probably the one that you're looking for, but the locators don't match anymore. But given that it's in the same context as it used to be, all of this is not AI. This is just, putting together the pieces and throw some statistics at it. And then you can ask the customer, is this what you think it is, or do we need to change it? I mean, just getting there is going to be a massive improvement. And if someone wants to call that AI, then, be my guest, but it's stretching it a bit, but it makes perfect sense to do that. It's going to make the lives easier for those no coding testers, because that's the everyday challenges that they're subject to, at least when working with different automation tools, where these different dynamic attributes of rendering and creating the application is a part of the deal.
Yeah.
So so the feature makes a lot of sense. Just don't call it AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. But what are your clients typically expecting then from when you have this no code conversation with them, and obviously being mindful that you said that you didn't really yet had the privilege of meeting an application that could match what you'd be able to do from a coding perspective. So from your perspective, what's the conversation typically about when both in terms of just talking automation, but also obviously these
first
heretic
of all,
tools?
it usually is that they want to automate everything. So you need to, as we started off with, you need to convince them that we can't do that, and then have the conversation about what information is it we want to get out, and what is it we want to automate, which risks, for example, do we have that could be suitable for that, or which a task that you don't like to do as a human because they are tedious or something like that. And so set up like some sort of test automation strategy or something like that. Usually the first thing I need to do is when I come to a new company.
Yeah, devise the strategy.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and that is only a part of because usually you have to go even one step further out. So take a look at the complete test strategy, or as I prefer to call it today, development strategies. As the development and testing go so hand in hand, and then you have a small piece of the complete development strategy that will be test automation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, even though that we are a vendor of this particular capability, right? And obviously we'd love to sell that. On the other hand, we're also a subscription product, which means that we have to renew frequently. And so believe it or not, we're also trying to get them to begin there. Our impression is that people are so tool driven nowadays. So this whether or not they've been seeing, a YouTube video with AI or something else in it, or it's just, this magical tool that will, weld on the water and change your underwear. They just go straight for that. Give me that tool. Everything will be glorious. We will solve problems if we only have that tool. And I'm sure you've been confronted by that as well. And then it might be your approach being code-based.
Yeah, I've seen another thing I'm really scared about during my teaching as well, that many people just want to learn a tool just as you're into, because the vendors or the companies doesn't employ you if you don't know this tool. And then they go and learn this tool, maybe even without knowing any testing upfront. So as a couple of person I spoke to, as we were calling it, that you are creating tool makers today that are not able to do any testing and not coding. They're just able to use the tool.
Yeah, exactly. So you're a fool with the tool at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. But obviously, and from our perspective, because that's certainly one way, and we agree that, that I agree that's certainly a direction. And I would also argue there's another aspect to it. And it may even be, I mean, at least in my book, it's a bit worse. Again, coming back to what I was saying about these people, these resources that we're talking about here, right? These people with this business insight, the knowledge of what it is you as an organization, what we're doing. And then in those situations where they're being, I was at a conference once, and this CTO was standing at the dais, and he was saying, right. So I'm saying to my people, you need to learn how to code or get another job. And so the interesting thing coming out of that really is a question to you, because I'm sure, would you agree that, you know, even though that you learn how to code, that does not make you a developer, right? It's something that takes years to master.
Yeah, we
And
had a meetup for like a month ago or something like that, where we were just was about the topic how to become a better test automation engineer, and I think when took up there, it was like you should first of all know testing, and then you should know the tool, and then you should know, as you are into now, how to code. And like a developer have like a 5-year education. Now there are here in Sweden you have 2 years educations as well, but 2 years is a lot more than a course on a week or something like that.
Exactly. And so to me, it's really strange to see that you'd had organizations pushing this agenda towards these people who they've, you know, invested a lot of time in, and you know, there's a reason they're so skilled and good at what they're doing. And so now they want to basically throw that away, because I'm guessing if these people wanted to be developers, you know, they would have chosen that path, you know, whenever that was relevant to them. So that's a built-in paradox, I think, in when you talk about this automation agenda. And I think as the application owner, you need to make the choice of which kind of capability that you're looking for, right? And so that, going back to the point I was making previously, you know, it needs to be a conversation of both from a tooling perspective, but it also needs to be a story about saying, right, as an organization, you know, we have a problem, we have a challenge, we have so much work to do and only so many people to do it. Now, what are we going to be doing with those people? Or more importantly, all these other guys over here, who's also part of it today, but, you know, from a skills perspective, from a competence perspective, are in play, you could say, in this conversation because they can't code. What are we going to do with them?
Yeah.
And to me, it's obvious that you have different tiers and you have different levels of types of testing and automation that you want to do, and you should explore that instead of you know, making these hard stops on either coding or no coding. It doesn't really make any sense.
No, I watched an interesting talk at Test Bash Home that was for just a couple of weeks ago. It was just discussing this, okay, test automation, that's coding. So I don't know coding. So, okay, I can't do any test automation. Exactly. And then he started to rethinking the question and evaluating it even more, and come up with that, you need to collect the data to a test automation. So have to input and output and things like this. And you need to, as I mentioned before, set up the strategy for the test automation, and you need to evaluate the results from the test automation. And I don't remember all things he come up with, but it was a lot more than just coding, at least. So
exactly,
someone needs to do all these other things as well.
Exactly, and somewhere in all of that, there's someone who knows what actually needs to be tested, right?
Yeah, that's also that's probably the most important, I will say.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the solution as well, and that's what we're trying to target. And so and I think, you know, I talk no code. I talk, you know, we're a vendor of such a tool that when we onboard new clients, we spend the first 90 days of, among other things, talking about the strategy, and not just, okay, install the software and get out the door, but really, because as I mentioned, you know, we're renewable, you know, they need to come back, otherwise we have a problem, right? And what I'm trying to say is that we're trying to, so one thing is to sell it, and then once we are then in the state of deploying it and getting clients to adopt it and to onboard it, you know, for us it's a cross-functional exercise. It's not either or, as I was also talking about previously. So even though that I may be able to provide you with an accessible tool for automation, which will make a lot of things easier, which will make it possible for you to accelerate parts of building automation, then there are topics associated with modularity, with reusability, with scalability, which requires you to do things, to build things in the right way. and to do things in a consistent way. So of course, what I'm talking about here is governance, and I'm talking about having some competencies at the table who can guide those resources who've we sort of unlocked or made accessible for this automation conversation, but guide them, help them, making things in the right way. I'm sure you'll agree. If we build automation in the wrong way, we can make a lot of trouble, and we can make it really fast. And that applies for our tool as well. If you don't have your wits about you, and as I said, it's an accessible tool, but many of the problems that we're trying to solve are complex. So if you're a functional tester and you're being challenged with iterating through a table with thousands of records, you need to think in a certain way to make that a scalable exercise, rather than manually building a loop that goes through 1,000 records, right? That doesn't really fly. So someone needs to collaborate to make that truly scalable. So in our world, we need both the skilled business people as well as the skilled technical people.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I'm not saying that I don't would try a tool that is about not coding, but as I mentioned, I haven't seen one yet that I think is good enough. But as a tester, I'm always open-minded to try new things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I completely sympathize with that. Because you have, and you personally, I mean, you have the benefit of having those capacities and competencies, right? So yeah, absolutely. Continue along that path, right? Because there's a lot of virtues and benefits working with that way, and there are types of testing, as we talked about previously, which is not accessible for a GUI-based tool. So there's a lot of tasks in the entire scope of testing that needs to be done by different types of resources and skills.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and that's also a problem I see when I educate people, that they think it's become so fun when they start using the tools, so they forget everything about the basic testing we learned. It's just fun to play around with the tool now.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So that's something you need to remind them about all the time. That, but what is it you want to test? You don't want to do, And also both with when you educate new testers and also with companies, going back to that question you asked before, that when they find out that, okay, we have test automation, and we can do CI/CD or CI, and then we can do CD, and all these kind of things. So okay, let's do continuous deployment tomorrow or next week, but we have no test automation today. So to compare it, you go by a horse and wagon today, and you want to go with a skyrocket tomorrow. So you need to take it step by step.
You just bought a rocket engine and you're putting it on your horse carriage.
Yeah, exactly.
See what happens.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. And it's I completely sympathize with the organizations, because that task is massive. If you think of it, right, converting not just the scope of testing, making some specific test cases run automatically. That's the only part of that gigantic pie, which is to convert it into a continuous operation, both from integration and deployment perspective, to stick to that terminology. It's a huge task, and as you say, if they don't have a strategy in place before they do all of that, because all CI/CD is tool driven in many respects, automation is tool driven. So it's like they go into Bauhaus or some other place and they I got this one, I got that one, and they just put them together, right? And it turns out funny.
Yeah, it's really fun to both see and listen to when they start talking about that.
Yeah,
and it's tedious to explain to them that we won't be able to do this in just a couple of weeks.
No, it's one of the big underestimated tasks. And at least in my experience, so when we target it from the testing automation bit, then they kind of go, oh, well, now we solved the hard part, and now we're ready for full automated this and that throughout the entire pipeline. And in the other end, you'll have testing environments that are working every 5 days or something. All of that mayhem, all of those activities associated, the core testing not working, environments not in control, test data not available.
Yeah.
But they have a tool. Let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and another interesting problem that will end up with the question to you as well is something I also need to explain for many people, that when you are doing test automation, then you are using a software to test your software.
Yeah.
So you will see a lot of strange problems that you can't explain. For example, like the environment stopped working as you were into, but it could be like the ID that doesn't work at the moment or behaves strange, and you just close it and open it, and then it works again. You can't explain why.
Classic.
Things like this. So, but in your case, then, that you're also using a software to test the software. So, how are you testing your tool when you're building it?
So when we're building it, we're testing it with Leapwork. So we're applying our own medicine. So there's a secret sauce somewhere which will allow Leapwork Studio to launch another instance of Leapwork Studio and automate it. And of course, it's a secret. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. So obviously we're using it, and we have the same problems as everyone else of getting automation coverage in pace with the features that we put in and all of that. So we're no saints, but we're working on it. And I think currently we are around, at any given time, we are in the neighborhood of 40-45% coverage to maintain that of an ever-growing scope into it. And then, of course, this thing that I was sharing with you previously, our approach to the new architecture, which is due to roll out starting next year, that's being automated from day one. So there we have a completely different approach to ensure that we have automation in place. And we're helped, not least, by the fact that the future version of Leapwork is running in the browser. So that makes some of those things easier as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trying.
Sorry.
No,
I was just about to say we're trying to take our own sauce, but
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just so that we start running out of time, but I was wondering if anyone has questions, since we have been talking nonstop, but I haven't seen any questions yet.
Maybe they're struggling to put the questions as well as getting in. Yeah. I'm sorry for all the troubles that you guys had to get through and to get into our Zoom link. Yeah. Sorry, Dasha.
Sorry, it was my bad. Can you guys hear me? I've got a question for you. Just got one question which came out, and actually just something to build in. Question about ways in which no-code automation supports agile development and CI/CD. If you can elaborate on that.
So what was it? Automation?
Yeah, in which ways no-code automation supports agile development and CI/CD?
Do you want to start, Jonas? From your perspective, code or no code?
Since I only have used code for it, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it depends also if it's possible to handle the no-code tool to save those test files in Git and GitHub in some way and put it in CI environment in some way. I don't know if you support Jenkins or Git Hub Actions or something.
We from a tooling perspective, so we support Jenkins. Our stuff is versioned, but we don't create any code. So checking Leapwork stuff into Git is really not possible. Doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the, you could say, the virtues or the benefits of working exclusively with front end based. So when you're testing, GUI, we're either testing the current or the next, right? There's not that many permutations in between. Underneath that, I get it. There's all of these branches and features and functionalities, but it sums up in some GUI functionality, and then our clients throw Leapwork at that. Going back to the question, if I may, if you want to utilize those traits, be it agile, be it CI/CD, be it any kind of automated context, which will allow you to realize that wet dream of getting stuff into production in a matter of days, there's no way around it. I mean, you need to automate. There's no way you can have manual resources coping with the speed and the pace that you want from a software delivery perspective. That's at least how I see it. How you then obtain that automation. And Jonas' point, you need a strategy before you even consider, placing one single character of code, be it code or no code based. You need a plan, and you need an objective, and you need to figure out how to get there. But the solution has to involve automation. Otherwise, it's not going to fly. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, if you have a software that is, I would say most softwares are released so often today, so you need automation in some way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I got another question comes in. What does your software resolve for problems? For which use cases is your software appropriate to use?
So I guess that's for me. So
yeah, that's for you. Yeah,
we're not talking code.
Yeah.
I think during the conversation we were talking about what can you test and what can't you test using Leapwork, and basically you can test stuff with a GUI. So anything that's sort of expecting there's a user sitting on the other side interacting with it actively, as opposed of indirectly, sending packages and transactions between endpoints. That's not our thing. There's a GUI, and there's a business process that is being serviced and operated through this GUI, and in those use cases, and GUI is many things, as we also touched in on. But in this respect, GUI could be running on a handheld device, scanning barcodes in a warehouse. That's part of an end-to-end solution in many manufacturing logistics scenarios, and you need to be able to include those into your overall automation effort, and that's what we have set out to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, there is actually one more.
Okay.
Question regarding the scalability. How can enterprises fully leverage automation?
You want to start? You want to? I can start, but I want to make sure you get a point in as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. As we have been mentioning, first of all, you need to start with this strategy for how you're going to do it, and you also need to be allowed to let it take time, and it will not just be done in a couple of weeks, as you went into before here with CI/CD. So for a small company, you should be happy if it takes 1 year. For a big company, you need probably at least 1, maybe 2 years before you have it up and running. So
yeah. I think crucial part of, slightly converting it into a experience/how-to session before you incorporate any considerations of tooling and actual implementation of automation. Get your sponsors in place. Get a clear understanding and identification who wants this, and make sure, as Jonas is saying, that they understand that you're in it for the long haul. This is something that's going to be taking quite a while. It's going to be a significant investment. So it doesn't make any sense if they come knocking on your door after 2 months. So I sent you the PO 2 months ago, so where's the automation?
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Trust me.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stakeholding. There's a lot of stakeholder management. Sorry, there's a lot of dialogue and communication before. So get those sponsors in and get them in for the long run.
Really good question, as always, as a tester, is the why question. So if you have a manager or something that tells you to do test automation, so start by asking why, and you can repeat the question many times. So and what
use with caution.
Yeah, of course. But
is the manager also happy that particular day? Otherwise, limit number of whys.
Yeah, but also, what is the information goal? What is the information he or she expects out from the test automation?
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely, I agree.
That's it from my side.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah, it seems like no one else has any questions either, and we have passed the time. So.
Yeah. But it was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I'm not even sure. So it's our Zoom link, but I guess you're the host, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure.
I
enjoyed the
it as
conversation.
Well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Audience enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, same here. And yeah, stay tuned, and we might come up with some other interesting conversations in the future. But it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's first time we do a meetup like this, so
yeah.
It was interesting.
And we will promise to get better at Zoom.
Yeah.
No, we'll sort that out.
My bad.
We will publish it at YouTube as well. So
yeah, cool.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.